in any country. Maybe it's just because I'm reading a book about propaganda, but it kind of shapes the view you have on the world right now, you know. So I see the things that they describe in this book everywhere. So you're kind of looking at TV and news and even the internet. You're kind of looking at it like, who is getting the best show? But you realize that it's all a show.
Right.
So
okay.
Maybe we got a better show, but behind the scenes, you know, I don't know if we're getting a better deal. I mean, surveillance is pretty crazy here in Holland. You can't really use public transport without being monitored. We got this chip card you have to use. When you get on a bus, you're constantly being monitored by facial recognition cams, and so it's pretty far down the road here.
Yeah, that's happening here too. Is that something you're concerned about, privacy or the loss of it?
Well, I think that the idea that we need this surveillance state is based on an irrational fear, you know? It's just like, I mean, it's probably more dangerous to masturbate twice in a day than... I mean, that would kill you sooner than a terrorist, but that's not the statistics we get in the news in the morning. So everybody, especially the larger public, is having an idea that we have to fear things that aren't really a threat. At least not to people individually, you know?
Right.
And that's what it should be about. I mean, it should be about an individual and not about the group.
That's a philosophy problem, though. I mean, for a country like America, or even, you know, take any of your top 3 power countries in the world. I guess if we're just talking about financial or military power, it would be America, Russia, and China right now. And China's coming hard. So America and Russia better watch their heels, because China's in the middle of a boom right now that has so many people fueling it and so many investors getting involved that I think they're going to fly past us in power. But there's nothing we can do about that except, well, there's something we can do, but it's going to be subversive. It's going to be essentially sabotage here and there to try to keep ourselves on top. And I don't like when it gets like that. But okay, Apocalypse, I wanted to share some of his ideas. He's going to pass out in a few minutes, but I didn't know this about him. I knew kind of libertarian, but he said this about corporate welfare. And as you know, corporate welfare is basically America's government taking taxpayer dollars to help out corporations in trouble, which I don't know. I mean, you can be from both sides of that. If the corporation stays afloat, there are more jobs, more trickle-down effect, yes. But why should the government be in the business of taking taxpayer dollars to help failed businesses? That's a good question. Libertarians get that bad rap for being laissez-faire in the business world, but at the same time, both major political parties in America, that's the Democrats and the Republicans, considered the left and the right ideologically, are the ones funneled corporate welfare. Libertarians say zero corporate welfare. So he's saying the libertarian viewpoint, which isn't left or right, it's north, is one that says don't help corporations. If they fail, they fail. I can't really disagree with that. I think that's fair. I don't think you should be more inclined to help a business than an individual in a country that protects individual rights. And then you have people like Mitt Romney saying, well, corporations are people too. When you start to humanize businesses, what you're humanizing is corruption. You're giving corruption a face that has to be taken care of and protected, I think. But that's a reach. You know, I'd have to, what business are we talking about? Why is it failing? Why do we want to help it? You know, I have to look at all of the subtext, and people want to narrow these things down into 1 and 2 sentence statements. And it's never that simple when it comes to corporations and who we should help keep afloat, and Americans, and who's really disabled and who's not, and who's trying to work but can't find a job versus doesn't want to work. These things all come into play. And until you get down into the gritty details, you can't know for sure. So these little blanket statements that you hear, these 1 and 2 sentence statements, you know, if people don't want to work, they shouldn't get any help. They shouldn't be able to eat. Well, all of them, really? I mean, shouldn't we look at the individual cases and see which ones merit that kind of discrimination? That's the way I feel about it. What's it like? What's the welfare system like there in Holland as far as people that just find themselves suddenly out of work or suddenly disabled? Do you have total free medical care there at this point?
Not anymore, but that has to do what you spoke about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
the baby boom generation that is retiring, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, the boom after the war was so big that people that are retiring now are retiring in mass.
Yeah.
So when you have like seven, maybe, no, well, maybe it was 8 people working for 2 that are retired and paying for those people to be, well, for their needs to be met. You now be going to a system where you got maybe 4 people working and 6 have to be paid their benefits.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, they're going to be undressing these welfare and pension plans. I mean, but I do think that Holland is in like the top 5 of the world when it comes to taking care of people that are a minority in the sense of being less able.
So we can go over some of the other stuff you may have written down, but what was the other thing I wanted to say about social welfare programs in the world? I can't remember what it was.
Well, what about, I mean, what Apocalypse is saying, I understand, I do understand the point of view that I think the problem with this is that, like you say, if you start treating companies like a person, which is already happening. I mean, the new trade deals will pretty much put a company at the same level as a country even. So, I mean, when you know that companies will be able to sue countries that don't apply the rules in the way that are most beneficial to the company, you know that these companies, wherever, they don't really care about countries, so they don't care about the people. I mean, if they can get a better deal, a better tax deal in Holland than in the US, they're gonna start a branch office in Holland. And I mean, so I think that that companies, especially the bigger ones, they've become so far removed from people that we need to scale down. I think we should be looking at a more local approach. And I mean, if it has to cost more to let, a good example is for here in the North Sea, we have people, Dutch fishermen, go out and they catch shrimps. But what happens with the shrimps are they are flown to Morocco, being peeled in Morocco and then flown back, and that is cheaper than letting them being peeled by Dutch worker. So you get my idea about. I understand that it's cheaper, but at some point, cheaper has to, when it gets crazy like that. I mean, fly it back to Morocco. I mean,
Yeah.
This is where this efficiency has to stop, you know, far before it. Yeah. This is not the idea that I would have about the working economy.
Yeah. Here in America, we don't have to deal with that because we have the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company, and they in the shrimping business, and they just, no, I'm just playing. I agree with that. Things need to get local. There's a movement right now to get local. And what people don't realize is that this goes for everybody, from getting your food local, from local farming, to California coming up with its own water solutions. And be disabled. And if you're in big trouble, something that can so, I agree with it. Validity of it. See, that's the problem. Economy is going to drive it, regardless of the efficiency. Take a look. You know, what I wanted to say earlier was I think that what's ruling the world right now, even if you look at Holland and how they're going to have a typical baby boomer problem, which you just told me about, I didn't know about till then, what's going to happen is the debt, whoever owns the debt will have the power. Debt is a very low-key form of power. But if China is loaning Holland money to pay for their baby boomer generation, when Holland believes, hey, we'll make it up in the next generation or two, and they can't, like a lot of people that get loans, America does this shit all the time. That's why we're into $20 trillion debt or deficit. We're in trouble because whoever owns our loans owns us. So we will be put around by them. and we'll be shaped by them and eventually controlled by them. So people don't see debt. In other words, you're a loaner. Whoever's loaning you the money to fix one of your problems, we don't see them as a threat. But really, they're buying us. They control us. Because if you can't pay your debt, you're going to do what they say. It's going to be a problem.
I understand what you're saying, but in the end, money and debt is just an idea. The word credit comes from a Latin word that means believe. So if you start, if you stop believing it in it tomorrow, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
So this credit is all just it's an idea, and we wrote down in rules that we follow this idea and we value it, but we can stop valuing it today. It's as simple as that. I understand that China holds all the debt, and that's what's going to give them the power, but it's not the country that gets the power. It's not the people in the country that get the power. They're going to get some more breadcrumbs, of course, and they'll like it. But in the end, it's something above countries that has the power, and they'll use the US, Russia, or China. They don't give a fuck about these ideas that these countries have about their identity. For them, it's all numbers on paper, and that's all that matters to them.
Yeah, that's right. Apocalypse in the chat room said he has been of the notion that let religions put their money where their mouths are and kick them in the head and make them help all these people they claim to care about so much, and a slight mixture for a government safety net, but let's use religion for all its use. What he's saying is if we pull some social welfare programs, he would expect religions to step up and help the poor. But I don't think you can trust religions any more than you can trust a 4-H club or a rugby club. They're doing their thing. They're not going to suddenly, just because they have some money coming in, turn to, even though they preach that all the time, love your neighbor, help the poor. If you look at the average Christian in America, RD, he's giving less to charity, if any at all, than your average Muslim is to Islam, which are required to give 15%, I think, annually to the poor. And yet we want to demonize them. And and I know that it's a small percentage, relatively speaking, of Muslims that engage in terrorist activities, and yet we want to demonize that whole religion. Why is that? Because it threatens our God, the average Christian God? I'm not a Christian, I'm agnostic, but I came up Christian. I had to learn my way out of that, and I don't want to demean the importance or validity of Christianity, but I've become a fan of evidence. And as you've said before, maybe I need to get more in touch with my spiritual side, but evidence seems to be the thing that gets me to the truth the most often, the most reliably, and the quickest. So I begin to trust evidence maybe a little too much, and I've kind of let go of my instincts a little bit because evidence seems to be right more than my instincts are. So maybe that's a mistake, maybe it's not. Maybe it's just a bad balance. But do you trust a religion, first of all, to protect a general population? And secondly, why would you suppose that most westernized countries are hating on Muslims right now?
Well, we have seen some evidence of at least groups of religious people stepping up to help people that are being dropped by government as such, and it's not about welfare here, but it has a lot to do with refugees from countries like Syria at the moment, because we're getting a lot of those here now in Europe, and these people that have failed to get like a asylum, is that what you call it when you get to stay?
Yeah, basically political protection from your former country.
Yeah, so the people that are coming in here and do not get through the program and have to be sent back, the government just calls them illegal and puts them out on the street, right?
Right.
So yeah, and the only people that are taking care of these people on the street, because you don't want to see them inside tents in front of your yard or in your public green place, So they take these people into churches and they take care of them, And so some have been there for 30 years. You know,